The top 100 is out as voted on by the hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. 5 49ers on the list, and at least one, a big old snub on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky on Twitter. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers. Thanks for hanging with us. Get ready for 2025. Most rookies reported to camp for the San Francisco 49ers. More on that as the week goes along and getting ready for training camp. We've already previewed all of our positions here. We've looked at all the teams, and now it's time to start seeing these fans on these players on the football field for the fans of the 49ers, getting to see a little bit more of the action soon. But today, Croc, we are talking NFL Top 100. This episode brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers at FanDuel can bet just $5. And if it wins, you get $150 in bonus bets. Just go to FanDuel.com to get started. Now, I'm going to put some graphics up if you're watching us on YouTube. We'll tell you some highlights of the list and specifically what San Francisco 49ers made the list of the NFL top 100 players according to the Locked On Podcast Network, Croc. But I think we have to start with the snub. And is he a snub? The player who did not make this list. And if listeners remember, we did a top 10 49ers episode earlier this offseason and utilized our top 10 list to nominate those players for the top 100 list and gave that list to the network before all the voting happened. Brock Purdy was on our list of top 10 San Francisco 49ers. He was not ahead of any of the guys that did make the list of the top 100 for the 49ers, but he did not make the top 100 list according to our network colleagues, Croc. Was Brock Purdy snubbed by not being voted as a top 100 player in the NFL?
He definitely was snubbed. All right. But if you take our same argument, let's do that. When we listed the top 5 just best players, not most, and that's the tough part, like most important to the team, that's number one. That's always going to be a quarterback of every team.
Yeah.
But we just list out, all right, who are the top 5 best players for the 49ers? And it's really tough. It's a tough argument because a lot of these guys are also the best players at their positions or top 3 or 4 or whatever at their positions, right? Like you got Nick Bosa, top 5 at his position for sure. You got George Kittle, top 5, top 2, and not 2. He's number one best tight end in the league, especially according to the voting here. Fred Warner, best linebacker in the league. Trent Williams, top 3 offensive tackle in the league. Christian McCaffrey, top 2 running back in the league, or at the very least top 3. So you have a lot of guys who are really good at their position. Then you get to Brock Purdy. And he was essentially kind of a snub on our list, but not really a snub because it's hard to justify putting him over other guys who are so much, I don't even want to say so much better at their position, but they're just better and more highly ranked at what they do. So when you look at a list like this, and if you fill up that list of kind of debates in a sense like that, I guess I can kind of see, but I was shocked to see or not see Brock Purdy on the list at all. Like I 100% snubbed. Should be there. I think even when you factor in importance to the team, that 100% should put him up there. I saw guys on the list like Travarius Ward. How is Travarius Ward on the top 100 list?
Yeah.
And I like Travarius Ward. Good cornerback. Has made an all-pro. But I think just, is he better than Brock Purdy or more important? That's tough. And I would say the answer to that is no. Like if you asked a fan of any team, would you rather have Travarius Ward or Brock Purdy? Maybe, a Kansas City Chiefs fan or a few other teams' fans would be like, oh, no, give me Travarius Ward. We need a corner. But most teams would be like, I would rather take Brock, even if he's at a backup. I think Brock Purdy as a backup is more important to your team than Travarius Ward as a starter. So I think the conversation, it's tough. And I can't wait to hear the fans' thoughts on why they feel he's snubbed, because that's a hard one to kind of decipher.
And you can go to social media and find the whole list. You can go to Locked On Sports Today, who revealed on that podcast the entire list. I talked about the whole list as well on the Peacock and Williamson NFL show today. So you can find all of those places to find the the list of top 100 players is voted on, and we're not going to go over every single player. Charvarius Ward, number 50. I was a little bit surprised how high he showed up on the list here. And other players that we put in our top 10 for the 49ers that we nominated for the list, guys, I'm not surprised didn't get voted in, but deserve some consideration. We've talked about Juwan Jennings this week. He was on our list. Brandon Ayuk, I know, is hurt, and that's a big reason why he wouldn't be in consideration. So I'm not surprised he didn't make the list, but he's as good or better than some of the names of some players I saw on the list. Dominic Pooney is a player that, an up-and-coming guard, a third-round guard. You usually have to wait a year too late to have names like that start to show up on your list. You see guys like Quinn Miners now showing up and probably even too low on this list, but getting some accolades, and it takes a little while for some certain players like that aren't, putting up big points on your fantasy football team. But I'm not surprised that those guys didn't get voted into the top 100, even if you believe they are deserving of it. But Brock Purdy is an interesting one because it's such a hot button, I think, conversation because of how he is viewed and how he's viewed around the NFL. And I think a lot of people do believe that it is the offense that props up Brock Purdy and not Brock Purdy that props up the offense. And I think it's witnessed by how the voting went for this and Brock Purdy not being on the list and a lot of other quarterbacks making the list, but not Brock Purdy. Now, the thing is, I think there's not any clear quarterbacks that are in a tier below Brock Purdy that did make the list as well. So I wonder if the list went to 110, 125. Like, would Brock Purdy be one of the next guys that did show up on the list? Because Dak Prescott, I'll bring up 91 through 100 here. So the very end of the top 100, Dak Prescott snuck in at number 93. And I would bet that if you polled just everybody around the NFL and pulled and ranked quarterbacks, Purdy would come up just behind Dak Prescott in most cases, even if 49ers fans we're talking to disagree.
The Dak Prescott one is very interesting because a lot of the arguments, right, say 49er fans, they'll talk about why they would rather have Brock Purdy over Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen because they'll be like, well, look at the postseason success, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, he's won more playoff games than some of these guys. And if that's your argument, cool. But some of it's just like, well, different scenarios, different situations. You look at the offensive coordinator, all those things. All right, whatever. But when it comes to Dak Prescott, I feel like Dak has done some really good things in regular season. He was like runner-up MVP one season, right? Like he had a terrific season. Cool, whatever. But I've seen these guys head-to-head and facing similar challenges. And to me, felt like just Brock Purdy has played better. Like he just looks better. Like even on the field, it's like, well, and I'm a guy I probably like Prescott more than most people. And I'm saying, like, I would, if you ask me, hey, what quarterback do you want? Oh, give me Brock Purdy, please, over Dak Prescott. Now, how close was the voting on it? If Prescott's the last quarterback in and he's, bottom 7 in the top 100, like you said, is Brock that next quarterback, and is he 102, 103, 100, right? Like if he's right there, I could see how it could have just been a slight, like just one vote another way could have been Brock Purdy over Dak Prescott. But the view, real quick, the view on these guys, and I think that's the big thing there. Brock Purdy is being haunted by the ghost of Jimmy Garoppolo, for sure.
Yeah.
It does not help that in a lot of the arguments and what people are saying in the sense of the team. When you're arguing, if you're arguing with a Philadelphia Eagle fan, or you're arguing with a Jacksonville Jaguar fan or something like that, right? You could say, oh, well, man, he's going to a Super Bowl. He's been to conference championship games. Like Brock Purdy's did. And it's like, Jimmy Garoppolo did the same thing with the same team. And sometimes not even the same team. I saw you in the comments talking to some fans about the importance of Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, and we'll get to that. But Jimmy Garoppolo he didn't have CMC, and they went to a Super Bowl. And we know the role that CMC plays for the 49ers and, helps with Brock Purdy. And we've seen what Brock Purdy and the team looks like without CMC and other players, but without CMC, not nearly as efficient of an offense at all. So from the outside perspective, when they watch Jimmy Garoppolo go to a Super Bowl, lose, They may even say, yeah, Brock is better, but it goes back to our question that we've said a bunch of times. How much better? And what they're telling you is we may think he's better than Jimmy. We don't think he's better to the extent y'all do, and that's why he didn't crack the top 100. I'm just assuming because we continue to hear these conversations. They were the same about Jimmy Garoppolo. The media was telling us we don't think Jimmy is that good. The media. Now, you'd have Kurt Warner, and he'd be like, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo is terrific. Look how Jimmy makes this throw, and look at this. This is very difficult. He's asked to do very tough things. I like how Jimmy did this. There's videos of it. Kurt Warner saying these things about Jimmy. So when these same guys come out and they're glowing about Brock Purdy, I think there's a different appreciation just for the quarterback position that's being played as what deemed to be a high level by quarterbacks and former guys. But if you're just asking talking heads to make a list and it's just fans or people that cover the NFL, most people outside of those quarterbacks are not going to have Brock very high.
There were 5 San Francisco 49ers that made the top 100. In fact, all 5 of them in the top 50. Let's talk about those guys and an interesting conversation in a maybe a comparison between 2 of those and why we believe the network got it right in listing George Kittle ahead of even Christian McCaffrey, as great as he is. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Baseball season on the All-Star break right now. But after the All-Star break is over, every day you got baseball. I love it. Summer sports in full swing, whether you're all about baseball under the lights or golf on the green, high-stakes soccer action. Just finished a big soccer tournament. I know some of my guys were locked into that and very excited about it. And FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. And you're already following the action. So why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. Heck, you can get sunburned while you are involved in the game, and you can bet on NFL football just like all the other sports because all the weekly lines are already up at FanDuel for the 2025 season. Bet on the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. Tons of prop bets for the 2025 season at FanDuel already. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Just open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Put the graphic.
One more thing on the Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay.
Brock Purdy front, and I'll leave it alone. I'm at the gym this morning, and I'm just getting over, about to do shoulders. I'm locked in, and the guy taps me, and he was like, "Hey, you've been on with Grant Cohn, right?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." So he gets to talking 49er football with me. All right, here we go. And sometimes because I think you and I, we have like logical conversations, I forget what's out there and like who's listening and how they listen. But he got to talking about Brock, and he was like, I would take Brock over any other quarterback in the NFL except for Mahomes. And like, I forget that that's out there. So sometimes when we're having these conversations, they're not even hearing us because that's how they feel,
Yeah.
Like the fan, like the real fan is like, and I just let them talk. But to tell me that there's not a quarterback he wouldn't take Joe Burrow. I wouldn't take any of these guys over Brock. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm thinking you're crazy. Like, to say Joe Burrow, you could have said all kinds of other names, but like, there's just certain guys where, and I know when we're having these conversations, like those fans are out there, and a lot of times those are the ones that are going to respond. So I have to remember that. But this morning, just crazy how it happened, and we having this conversation, it just was a really good reminder of sometimes like how people are listening to us.
Right. Well, that's why you come to Locked On 49ers to get the objective view and be reminded where things are in the world, because sometimes you get in this orbit and you're like, wow, Brock Purdy is the greatest quarterback of all time. Or the other side of it, and the other side of the orbit that keeps it spinning is the Brock Purdy's garbage. And he wouldn't be anything without Kyle Shanahan, wouldn't be anything without Debo and Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams and all the things that the offense does for him. And he's not that good, and he's overrated. And so you're going to get both sides of those things, and neither one is accurate, Croc. And that's why
I think a great way to put it and I think it was an exec that Adam Schefter was talking to when teams were looking for quarterbacks and whatnot, and they're like, "Hey, 49ers, are you keeping the pulse on Brock Purdy? Is that somebody you may be interested in?" Right, and these are QB needy teams, and multiple execs said Brock Purdy's a great quarterback. He's better for them than he would be for us.
Yeah.
And I think that's how there's a good amount of people out there. Now they may suck at quarterback and may continue to suck because they don't have a Brock Purdy, but that's just how they view it. And that's the execs. That's not even just a fan base or a talking head.
It's interesting because you see quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield's on the list, and Baker Mayfield's a good quarterback. And I think Baker Mayfield's probably in that same tier with Dak. And Baker Mayfield is really high. I think he was actually snuck into the top 50 on this list. I was a little surprised by actually where he was, but he's in that tier with Brock Purdy. So if Baker's at 47 and Brock's not in the top 100, I think that's skewed and that's off. But if it went like, if you said Baker's 90, Dak's 91, and Brock's 92, then I probably wouldn't fight you. But if you think there's a big spread there in that tier of quarterbacks, then I think that's where there's a problem. And it seems like there is a lot of people who feel that way, whether the voting on the top 100 list or just whether it's executives, media fans, wherever. There's a lot of split on how you rank those quarterbacks and where those quarterbacks are kind of tiered out.
Some of that may be recency bias, right? I mean, just the last thing that everybody saw. If you're not just fully locked into the 49ers, they had some injuries or whatever, but you're not super locked in. You don't know how decimated by injury and other tragedies this 49ers team was, but they just know, well, we watched Brock Purdy in some primetime games and he had meltdowns late in the fourth quarter, regardless of who the 49ers are missing. They don't care. But then they look at Baker Mayfield and they just watch him throw 42 touchdowns and 40, whatever, right? And lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to the postseason. So if that's just the last thing and you're not super locked in on the day-to-day details of what's going on with the 49ers, I don't think there should be that much of a difference, but I could see how you may have kind of a spread between the two guys.
The 49ers tied for third most with 5 on the top 100. The only teams with more were the Lions had 6. The Eagles had 7 players that made the top 100 list. And I'm going to put it up on the screen again for those of you watching on YouTube. Nick Bosa coming in the highest out of San Francisco 49ers, number 17 overall in the top 100. George Kittle at number 22. Right behind him at 24 was Fred Warner. And then 41 and 44 were offensive tackle Trent Williams and running back Christian McCaffrey. Now, recency bias is always going to be part of it because you're kind of projecting 2025 in this list. You're looking at what just happened last year. You're looking at a 3-year window. You're looking at a certain amount of consistency from players, who's been good, who is good, who will be good, who might even be better than they were last year. So there's a lot of that goes in, and every vote is going to be a little bit different considering all the criteria that you could for who would be in a top 100 list. And Christian McCaffrey at 44, I think a lot of people would argue is too low, but he also didn't have a season last year. And, it wasn't good when he was on the field for just a little bit anyway, because of all the injuries. And so I get why Christian McCaffrey is where he is, but I also get why if he has a healthy season, he'll be, back in the top 10 probably next year.
Yeah. And Christian McCaffrey is another one of those guys who obviously we know how pivotal. I can't wait to have the conversation in the debate about CMC and George Kittle on social media for you. And shame on the network for trying to have you pin those two against each other and put you in the middle of it, right? Like that was what they did, try to drum up a little controversy there between two of the 49ers better players. But CMC, I think we all know what he means to the 49ers. And when he's on the field, again, that's another one of those recency bias type things. I'm looking, I see how high Saquon Barkley is, and deservedly so. He ran for a ton of yards. He was super important to the team. I think, not to belittle what Hurts did, I think Hurts has played in 2 Super Bowls now, and he's been terrific in both of those. But I think, Barkley took a little pressure off of him for sure, and how well, he performed in those big moments. You disagree?
Well, it's too long of a conversation right now. I want to get into that because I think short version is, and there might be some 49ers fans that disagree and get mad at me about this. The Eagles clearly did something right because they've hosted Lombardi. And they hoisted one previously as well without Saquon Barkley, right? But you build the running game and you plug that tasty running back in at the end. Saquon Barkley had 1,000 yards last year before contact, before he was ever touched by a defender. Build the running game and then put a good running back behind it. You can't build the thing out of the running back. And maybe
that's what the Raiders are trying to do right now. They drafted that running back out of Boise State, and I'm like, y'all not there yet.
Right. Yeah. And because there's too much attrition at the running back position in the NFL, you can't build it out of the running back. And if your offensive line's good, it's going to help your running game. It's also going to help your quarterback. It's going to help your passing game. It's going to help you eat clock. It's going to help you close out wins. It's going to help you in so many different ways. And I would point to the Eagles as doing it really smart. They didn't have to trade a bunch to get him either. They only had to pay him. And they're paying him year to year. So he goes down and gets hurt. Cool. We paid you while you were here. And it was awesome. Eagles did it right.
But
next,
CMC, I got off track a little bit.
Yeah.
Very important to the 49ers. And I am excited to see, just get back to being healthy. The tough thing is, and we continue to have that caveat. Running backs, sometimes the injuries start to pile up. He was banged up a couple years in a row before he got to the 49ers. We got a great year and a half out of him. And you look at him now, and the injuries may start piling up. And I think the tough thing is, especially if you're Brock Purdy, or you want it, a guy like CMC to be the reason why it didn't quite look the same. He may not ever be the 2023 version of CMC that we once saw.
Let's talk a little bit more about McCaffrey, Kittle, why Kittle is ahead of McCaffrey on the list, and give the flowers to the guys that did make the top 100 on the San Francisco 49ers next. So Nick Bosa, do you think Bosa's in the right spot? 17. He's not coming off his defensive player of the year season. He's coming off a 9-sack season that he had last year. And guys like Myles Garrett were number 4 on the list. TJ Watt was 11. You had Micah Parsons that was, I think, 8 on the list. Max Crosby just a hair in front of George Kittle, ahead of Nick Bosa. In fact, let me pull up that slide. So I'll put it on the screen for you guys. Watt was 11 after Parsons and Garrett, as far as defensive ends go, and pass rushers. Watt listed as an outside linebacker here. Max Crosby, 15, Bosa, 17. Do you take Bosa ahead of Watt, Crosby, or even Parsons or Garrett?
I think that there's a conversation, and because there's a conversation and they're so close, I won't argue the list. Maybe I have him a little bit ahead of one of these other guys, but it's like pulling hair. So I could see, again, if you don't have any skin in the game and you're just viewing the list, you may say, oh, give me Myles Garrett, give me Watt, give me Parsons, give me Crosby, and then give me Nick Bosa, and I still would love that, right? They have him as a top 5 defensive end, super high on the list still. So, you're telling me if you take away all the defensive ends that they have, you know what I'm saying, and you just look at everybody else, but they have 11 people over him outside of the DNs. I could take that. I think there's a good conversation for him being that good in the NFL. 17th best player in the NFL. That's really good.
That is awesome. You look at George Kittle as number 22. And again, we got it right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And I'll give the network credit because, snubs aside, the 5 players that were on the list, I think I wouldn't argue too much about them being on the list and where they are on the list. George Kittle, unlike some other lists you might see out there this summer, George Kittle, the number 1 tight end in the NFL. He was the number 1 tight end on this list.
That's where my issue comes in, Peacock. We're talking about value. We're talking about importance to the team and whatnot. There was no 49er player that had a better season than George Kittle. So
yeah,
I get Nick Bosa being over him. I feel like they're kind of weighing a little bit of positional value there because George Kittle was everything for anything that they had going on. And Nick Bosa wasn't. We're not talking about defensive player of the year, Nick Bosa.
And speaking of defensive player of the year, Fred Warner, don't forget how good Fred Warner was at the beginning of the year. We were talking about, okay, we're going to start hyping up Fred Warner as defensive player of the year. He was that good to start the year, had the ankle injury, was still good, but played through the ankle and wasn't quite at that level. But he came in as the highest line. I think there's only 3 true off-ball linebackers in the entire top 100, Croc. Like there's 1,000 receivers, there's a bunch of quarterbacks, some defensive ends. There's like 3 linebackers, man. It's not that easy of a position. Like it is not the golden age of linebackers right now. That's for sure. And Fred Warner's still the best of them, even on a hobbled ankle all year.
Linebackers and running backs definitely take the short end of the stick when it comes to kind of rankings, because you'll have the top guys there. So you got the top 3 linebackers. They make the list. You got the top probably 3 running backs. I mean, I'm assuming you got CMC on there. You got Henry on there. I'm sure you got Saquon Barkley. How many other running backs are on this list?
There was Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs. What is that? 5 running backs?
That's 5.
And I think Kamara made the list, and that was one of my kind of disagreement. Yeah, he's past his prime, like maybe a lifetime achievement award there for him being on the list, even as high as he was too. So Calais Campbell is another one I disagreed with that probably didn't belong on the list. There's one I really, really disagreed with. I don't know if you saw. Brandon Aubrey, the Dallas Cowboys kicker, was on the list. And I think the Cowboys guys were trolling us and might have just like listed him number 1 overall to try to prop him up to get him on the list. I mean, that can't happen. What do we do?
He was their best player last season.
He's ahead of Dak. He's ahead of Dak on the list.
Oh, I will say the weapon that he was, when your kicker is that good, and he actually missed some kicks late in the year, but he started off, I'd say maybe through the first 12 weeks, he just wasn't missing at all. And he was nailing kicks from like 65, 66 yards out. He was a weapon. We talked about the kicking position and how much better is a 3rd round pick as opposed to an undrafted guy or a kicker off the street. It's probably maybe a kick or 2 better. Hopefully that's what you're hoping for. He was about 5 kicks better because he was kicking stuff from midfield and making it. So he kind of turned himself into a weapon. I'm not saying he should be on the list, but if there is a kicker in recent years, and I'm not even talking about being clutch, right? Because you've had clutch guys. 49ers had Robbie Gould. I thought he was really clutch. I still probably wouldn't put him on a top 100. But the weapon that Aubrey was, I think you can at the very least make an argument for putting him on the list, because now it didn't result in a whole lot of wins for the Dallas Cowboys because of whatever other issues they had going on. But that dude was a weapon. He was a weapon. He was automatic on if you're playing like Prize Picks or Underdog Fantasy or anything like that. Oh, yeah. It was automatic with him.
So I think, with Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey, 41, 44, not going to fight it. They're obviously phenomenal football players. They were banged up last year, and so that's going to knock them down a little bit. But I was thrown under the bus a little bit by the network. They asked me to record a short video on why, or if I thought it was correct that George Kittle was voted ahead of Christian McCaffrey specifically. I put it out there, and then they posted it up on social media and had some pushback and had a nice little conversation with I think it was Total Sports HQ was the handle, and we argued a little bit about it. And I appreciate the conversation, but I didn't want people to think I was crushing Christian McCaffrey, but I do think the network got it right, and I think maybe the network folks that asked me to do the video maybe thought I was going to say, "Oh no, Christian McCaffrey is better," because I think that is one of the. As good as Christian McCaffrey is, I think George Kittle is more important. I think he's a better player for the 49ers. Part of it is because of injury, but part of it is because how good the 49ers are at running the football without Christian McCaffrey. And we've seen it. You talked about the Jimmy Garoppolo era. Niners offense run the ball just fine. 200 yards in a playoff game with Raheem Mostert, right? So the running game is going to be good. And the better the offensive line is with Kyle Shanahan in a run game, you're going to be running the ball just fine. And George Kittle is part of that. George Kittle helps Christian McCaffrey be better. Does McCaffrey help Kittle be better? In some ways, probably. Take some pressure off, maybe. But I think not as much as the other way around. And especially when you consider the seasons they had last year, George Kittle, far and away, deserved to be higher on the list than Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion. What about you?
Well, not even close. Well, again, if we're just going off of, you go off of past season, you kind of project forward. I mean, how much of a drop off do we think we'll see from George Kittle? I don't. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but he continues to prepare at a very high level, and so does Christian McCaffrey. He prepares. But the last time we saw them, George Kittle was George Kittle, and he was a second-team All-Pro, snubbed from first-team All-Pro, and Christian McCaffrey was hurt. So
Right.
just off of that alone, well, yeah, the network got it right, and George Kittle should be higher on the list than Christian McCaffrey. Now, this season, if Christian McCaffrey returns to his offensive player of the year form, then he'll be higher than George Kittle in the next year's voting.
One of the other things, so I talked about, we brought up with the Eagles, and we talked about the pre-McCaffrey Purdy era with the 49ers and being able to run the ball and all of those things. And clearly Christian McCaffrey is really good, and you should, teams game plan for him, and the 49ers should game plan around him and how good he is. But did they become too running back reliant last year? And if one player gets hurt and causes you to have a 6-win season, are you preparing wrong for the season? Because I think you should expect your running back will get hurt if you hand him the ball 350 times.
Yeah. And when that's the case, right? Okay, you don't have CMC there, but you do have JP Mason who ran well. I think it's the other things that's what people will start to point to, like, hey, well, the defense dropped off a cliff, was not good, wasn't good against the run. You look at some of the other injuries at receiver position. Like, let's say if you had the version of Debo that we had grown to see, and he was good, and Ayuk played every game, and Ricky Pearsall's shoulder wasn't blown off, it had his issues with the shoulder and everything. And George Kittle's George Kittle. How much do you need? Like, do you see that big of a difference in the offense now without CMC? And I would say probably not. I think you always just kind of miss his production that he's able to get. So you'll like miss that. But in the sense of the offense just being good like it was in 2019, I'd say, but yeah, like it'd still be good. Like Kyle's offense would still be good without CMC. It's just the cherry on top. It's getting Saquon Barkley to the Philadelphia Eagles, put cherry on top.
And he still ran the ball 5.2 yards per clip with Jordan Mason too. So it's not like a Kyle Shanahan offense is all of a sudden going to forget how to run the football because one guy's not in there. What do you think? Let us know at BD Peacock, at Coach Crocky on Twitter. Let us know in the YouTube comments. Did the network get it right? NFL top 100. Who got snubbed? Which 49ers belonged on the list that didn't get there? Did he get the 49ers that were on the list? Those 5 players, did they get those right? Let us know. And Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.